Good evening, my name's Julie Cairnes and I'm a life mastery and conscious creation coach. Welcome to the Inner Peace Masterclass, and tonight I actually want to start with a factual anecdote. So in 1982 in Paris, there was a physicist by the name of Alain Aspect who did some work with physicists and discovered a fairly amazing fact around the behavior of electrons that was quite unusual. And that was that they could communicate instantaneously with each other in certain circumstances, whether they were 10 feet apart or like 10 million feet apart. It was shown that the communication was instantaneous. Now, this hasn't been a really popular theory that he's discovered because it actually lays waste a little to Einstein's theory of the speed of light and speed of communication, because if we look at Alain Aspect's theory, it actually says that communication is instantaneous, and and what the actual bottom line that comes through is that it's part of a larger intelligence, and that the entire universe becomes a phantasm of a gigantic mind that we're all part of. So that's kind of how his theory became the theory of the hologram, which is, again, another body of work that we can delve into actually how holographics work. So I have with us tonight Otto Richter, who has written and studied extensively on human holographics. So welcome, Otto, to the Inner Peace Masterclass. With that.
Thanks, Julie. Nice to be with you.
I don't usually do such a long beginning, but I really wanted to tell that story.
That was pretty impressive, I have to say.
Well, it's interesting because it does kind of change the lay of the land around how we communicate, and it does talk about the universe being a higher intelligence, and that we're all part of it. So I would like to sort of hand that to you about, how you work. What does that mean? Human holographics, what does that mean for you? That is your field of work, your body of work.
It comes right off of what you were just saying. I really believe in a human collective, and even a field of which that collective is a part of. So there's something much larger than us out there, and my work is all about relating to that larger whole, from who we are as little individuals, as we go to work and in our relationships. How can we stay connected to that larger whole, feel like we're a part of it, and contribute to it consciously?
Yeah, because the actual hologram theory itself talks about everything that comes off a hologram, because it's developed using laser beams, I believe. One laser is directed in one direction and then one at the other, and it kind of activates the image. But no matter how much you take off the image, it still carries the entirety of the memory of the entire image. So no matter how small.
There are two laser beams usually used in the normal holographic imagery. And I've translated that into my work, and I have what I call two basic assumptions, which kind of represent those two laser beams. The first assumption is, getting back to what we spoke of before, is that my life as an individual, my life is a learning situation. I call it like a mystery school. Right? It's not a dogmatic kind of belief that I want to drill into people, but it's something I like to offer people just to look at, and it helps. The second assumption is that I have my own tutor, so to speak, my own private teacher or professor in that universal school or that mystery school. I call it my higher self, or that part of us, that divine self, which is really guiding us. And that's the part through which we connect to that larger whole. So what good is that assumption? Well, I wake up in the morning and I say, well, I have something to live for. I mean, my life is a school. There's something I might learn today, rather than, going to have a bad day and there's not much here for me, so I'll try and get my way through it and come back and have dinner and go to bed. And have survived. But for me, life is more about not just surviving, it's not just thriving in the normal sense out there in our world with money and all that. It's about a kind of a joy and a pleasure in my existence that, you know, makes my life worth living, gives me a sense of purpose and a good feeling about who I am. And that really, you know, then I can go to sleep and sleep well.
Yeah, it's the way to live. Really, there is no other way to live without that higher purpose.
Yeah.
Pretty directionalist. That I think illness comes and depression when we're not following that higher purpose. It's fairly obvious. Our body speaks to us.
Well, it certainly does. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, you know, we are addicted to emotions. You know, that's just straight out. We have our own habitual patterns of emotion that we love to pump up and bring into effect, and they also are producing a biochemical response in the body, and also brain activity changes. So there's all something to be really aware of now, and there's plenty of reading in the neurosciences out there that backs all that up, that says we really need to become more aware of, you know, the emotions that we unconsciously manufacture to get those drugs that we are literally physically addicted to. And people don't think of it that way. Yeah. So when we fall into, say, a state of depression or, you know, darkness, let's say, feelings that, the past memories that pop up, perhaps traumatic memories, even those, some of which will come up regularly, we are addicted to. And it's important for us to know that, so that, you know, like any addict, first thing is become aware of your addiction, so that maybe you can look down and realize that you're the one who's got the needle in your hand and putting it in, and then take it out.
Yeah, it's that cortisol is one of the quite negative chemical releases that happens in the body. I think it really, and it's sadly addictive, that, you know, from trauma, that kind of the cortisol release that's produces that ongoing painful, but to many people who haven't recovered from trauma, they're experiencing that ongoing pain in their body. I did want to actually...
stress hormones,
yeah.
amphetamines, I mean, this stuff really is what causes disease. Yes. And when we fall into our habitual so-called negative patterns of emotion, we just are literally dumping these bad chemicals into our brain and blood. And it's incredibly unhealthy. And I think that, you know, the more people become aware of that, the more they'll be able to, you know, change that and look for something to replace. And that's really what my work is a lot about, is bringing to awareness the fact that we are far more in charge of our state of being than we would like to be, or than our egos would like to be. It's a lot of responsibility, but we are, I believe, divine. We are incredible beings that have so much possibility and potential. But we look at ourselves as so small. We look at ourselves as beings that, you know, need to become enlightened, when in fact, we might look at it in a different way. We might look at it like we are already enlightened. We already have these possibilities to say, descend into this human body, into this human mind, and into this human heart, into this human soul, and affect it in a very positive way. What am I dumping into my blood and brain when I fall into an emotional addiction unconsciously? I need to know that. And if I look at it from that way, like I'm more of a conscious entity, and I say, oh, I look at that and I call myself by name and say, Otto, what are you doing? What are you dumping into your system? You know, when I drive the car on the in Germany, we have the Autobahn, or the highways, you know, and people get pretty nasty out there. It's how I respond to the needs I perceive. And if I don't imagine that I am a being that can do that, if I feel like instead that I'm just this regular other person on the Autobahn, and I have just as much right as you do, and then, you know, then I'll just activate the reptilian part of my brain, and the amygdala, in fact, and then I'll just go into reaction, fight or flight, and a fight, perhaps on the Autobahn, is not the best place to be. Happens all the time.
Yeah.
I guess that, you know, most accidents, from what I see, are caused by this little tit-for-tat kind of game, power tripping while driving the car. But that same thing happens in conversations over lunch or at work. So it's really about recognizing that we have the ability, we have the power, and we have the chance to make a choice about how we affect our bodies first, by what thoughts we fill our heads with, what emotions we fill our hearts with.
Yeah, it's very much along the lines, I don't know if it's Taoist or Buddhist or all of the spiritual paths that just say, change your mind. Change your mind. You know, like you have the power. That kind of, to me, encapsulates what you're saying, that we have the power to actually change our thinking, and we can do it as soon as we want to.
I think that's true.
We
have
that choice, and people forget they have that choice.
People, they have a choice, but you know, it takes some practice. Let's be clear about that. And because the you know, our old training, I mean, we've been brought up, we've been raised to think like we are less than able to do that, and we should struggle and we should suffer to become better people and all of that, whatever. So we really have to go through a patient learning process to realize that we are the ones, in fact, who have, you know, the remote control in our own hands. We are in charge of our destiny in that sense. We are in charge of our blood chemistry from moment to moment. It's amazing. And the wonderful, one of the wonderful tools we have now, and again, you'll read all about that in some of the neuroscience research, is the fMRI, the functional magnetic resonance imagery scanner. So you can literally, you know, have somebody in the scanner, ask them to think thoughts of love or compassion or connectedness to the hologram, that larger whole that we talked about before. And you'll watch, literally, on the computer screen, the brain activity move from one place of the brain to another. Well, that's striking. That's striking because it just shows how quickly our brain activity is affected by our thoughts, from thought to thought to thought. And when you see that, it's breathtaking. And it says, oh my God, I'm a far more intelligent and able creature than I ever suspected. Which means, wow, I don't have to suffer as much as I have been. What can I do? Yes. And so then I start to watch my thoughts. Yes. And then I start to watch how I am affected by my thoughts. What emotions pop up seemingly from nowhere, but it's not from nowhere. It's from my own habitual creation of those emotions. So here and here, we have fourth chakra, sixth chakra. When these two come together, when we have the sharp image of thought, and then we bring in the music, the orchestra of our heart and our emotions, these two together create what we call thought form. And it really impacts the system in an enormous way, as I said, blood, brain, and brain activity within a second, probably less.
Which is the shamanic tradition.
Say it again?
That is the shamanic tradition of, you know, bringing the heart into the vision, which gives you that vision, gives you the... Exactly. Yeah. Clear thinking. Sorry, can I ask just how you came to Human Holographics? We didn't actually talk about your journey to reach the passion that you have for that field, which is absolutely fascinating and encapsulates the entire universe within it. What brought you there? What took you there?
Oh boy, that goes way back. I must have been, say, 19 years old.
Yeah.
I was a musician. I was somewhat successful. I had plenty of money, all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll a 19-year-old could want. And it wasn't enough. Like I said, I realized that I'm not satisfied, and basically I was, you know, moving into a deep depression. And really, I you know, reached out to the universe or whatever was there, because I didn't know, I had no clue, and said, all right, if there's, you know, if there is a God, if there is something out there, if there is some force that I'm just unaware of, haven't gotten there yet, missed that day at school, show me, tell me, you know, give me a sign, as they say, because otherwise probably I'll OD or have a little accident somewhere, and I probably won't be around here much longer. I'll probably want to move on. So that was my thing. Pretty
much in an existential funk.
It was a crisis in that sense. I didn't know what a crisis meant at that point, but yeah, it really, it was a make it or break it. Well, let me say, within 2 weeks, I had my first teacher, meditation teacher, through a series of the strangest events. And you'll hear this time and again from many people how that happens. When you ask, when you're more or less on your knees, and you know, I wasn't begging, but I just said, look, if you know, if there's something to be done here, I'd love to do it. I'd love to be a part of this. You know, there is something great here, but I haven't found it yet. So if you can show me, you know, point the way. So I had a meditation teacher within 2 weeks who put me in touch with a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And then that meditation teacher put me in touch with her psychic chiropractor. Right. And I went to this guy, wonderful guy, and he you know, he put his hands over me, and I'm looking at him like he's some loony bin. And you know, he said, well, there's nothing wrong with you. Why are you here? And I said, I don't know. I was just, you know, I told to come here. And so he gave me a few books to read. He said, come back in a few weeks and we'll talk some more. So basically I went back for maybe a half a year, every few weeks, and talked to this guy. And he helped really just change my attitude and open up my thinking and my feeling into the much larger whole, that hologram. He then turned me on to his teacher, who was based in Virginia Beach, Virginia. So at one point, I just left everything I was doing and went down to serve this man called Paul Solomon, who became my #1 teacher for a number of years, who I served and lived with and became the chela of.
Right, wow, okay. So a real apprenticeship.
Real apprenticeship, so nothing else was important to me. You see, that's really the key. I was at a point of desperation, and it was so deep that I can tell you know, everyone that desperation in that sense is not a bad place to be. And if you're in a state of desperation, don't pity yourself, because it's a gold mine. If you look up, if you ask, if you reach out and say, hey, you know, if there is something out there, if there is a way for me to be a part of it, for me to connect to it, and maybe even contribute to it, you know, be patient, listen, and you'll be led the right way.
Quite honestly, I really think that our higher power, wherever that dwells, loves to be spoken to from the heart, loves to have the emotional, that, you know, really deep, the energy of truth coming through you. That's, you know, like you came from your truth.
Absolutely. Look, we're lazy. You know, human beings are just really dirt lazy. And if we don't need to change, we won't change. Like computer systems, you know, don't change if it doesn't have to be changed. So we're basically lazy. We'll let it sit there. So we'll just take the status quo, normal state of consciousness, even if it's rotten.
Yeah.
You know, I like to say, you know, ego much prefers a hell that's known, to an unknown heaven.
Strange.
Because it doesn't like to move out of what it thinks it knows. That's too much of a risk for ego. And so to move into this place of the unknown, even if it's gorgeous, even if it's heavenly, ego would rather stay in this place it knows, that it feels safe in, even if it's hellish. And that's the sad part. We will stay there until like I did. I hit bottom. I hit rock bottom. Even though life was good, I hit rock bottom. And I think you're right. That higher force is just kind of standing around going, you know, I'll wait until, you know, this person finds rock bottom and says, okay, enough. I'm ready to change. I'm ready to grow up, and I'm ready to own my divinity. I'm ready to bow before it, to be grateful for it, and stay humble before it, but also rise within myself to my greatness.
Yes.
And that's the key.
That's a huge challenge for many.
Well, I don't think it is as much as we think it is. Again, I think that's what I say, that place of desperation. Sometimes you might want to just kind of help put yourself there, because it's really, it's like a catapult.
Sorry?
It's like a catapult.
Yeah.
You know, if you're open, and if you stay in your heart and you really are open to the new and open to, you know, this idea of being saved is not what I like to say, because that's not what I feel. But in a sense, it is. It's like, you know, you're at the rock bottom, and you're asking for some guidance, and a part of you. It's not some. I don't believe it's some, you know, mythical entity out there that, you know, is dressed up in sandals and robes. For me, it's a part of us. It's a part of us. It's a part of our divinity. It is who we really are. And we're just filling this body. Imagine like a light inside this body who knows exactly what this body needs. Same in this mind, same in this heart. And if we look at ourselves that way, it's a whole new day. Instead of looking at ourselves like, oh, I can't, and oh, it's all so much, and blah, 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 then we just spiral down along with the chemical reactions into a very negative, disease-ridden space. We need to rise up.
And Otto, you've written 7 books at least. I know there's been an 8th about partnership, but you've written a series of 7 books that relate to the chakra system, evidently also. But when I looked at them, funnily enough, I didn't see the chakra system. I saw the power of the 4 directions and the grounding, and, you know, and the being. So that was really interesting. So I'd love to for you to talk to those books and just tell us a little of them, because you have got the 4 directions, and you have got the spirit, center, and earth as part of the entire whole. So that's a huge body of work you've done there, and I believe it encapsulates a lot of the work that you've done over the years.
Yeah, I really connected the chakras with my shamanic work, a medicine wheel, which I've created. It's a 3-dimensional medicine wheel therein, the holographic view. Let me just backtrack a moment. After I worked with Paul Solomon, I worked with, you know, that everything goes in waves, and with teachers and everything. So thereafter, I found my way to working with Gabrielle Roth, who really brought me down to my body.
Wow.
And I worked with her for 6 years.
Yeah.
I started the Mirrors with her, which was the original music group and experimental theater and dance group. So we toured together through the States and Canada.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
This was magic for me as an artist, into the spirit, you know, to combine these things. How beautiful. Those were some of the greatest years in my life. So that was an enormous influence. Before that, my spiritual work was all in my heart and my head, but really not in my body. So she really slapped legs and roots onto my wings, and really just brought me into a vertical space. So gratitude to Gabrielle, who passed away some years ago.
Yes.
Also, I studied with an Indian Sikh called Tara Singh, beautiful man, Bhakti yoga master, the yoga of devotion, and really that helped me a lot with the heart. He really opened my heart and taught me about service and how a state of worship and a state of love. Also, we didn't know it then, but you know, we knew that it affected us so deeply. We didn't know it was biochemical or brain activity, which we do now. But we knew then that wow, I mean, for thousands of years before, that's what they were teaching. And wow, it worked. It slammed you into a higher state of consciousness. And that was a healing thing. We knew that. But now we know why, and this is fantastic. Anyway, thereafter, I started getting into shamanism and met, of course, how you do it. You know, your people are brought to you somehow. When you reach out, people are brought to you. So I worked with a number of people, finally finding my way to Don Eduardo Calderón Palomino, a Peruvian shaman in Trujillo, Peru, who I studied with for a number of years, going back and forth to Peru, and sometimes he would visit the States. At the end of the day, I assisted him in his rituals and in his work, and contributed my work also to his work. In fact, we did some groups together in the States and also here in Europe. In fact, the first time I came to Europe, I was invited to speak at a conference on shamanism and to give a workshop. So that's how my shamanic roots were planted or set into the ground. And really, so as I look back, I thought, well, all right, I have a lot under my belt from a lot of different perspectives. I mean, Paul came from a family of 3 generations of Baptist ministers. He had 7 interpretations of the Bible. So there were a lot of influences in my life that I thought to myself, well, how can I put this together? Long story short, had a French Quebec girlfriend who we would go to a mountaintop once in a while. And we visited a mountaintop for 2 weeks at one point. And I wrote down this entire training, which was then the training that took me through the next 25 years here in Europe. And so it developed over those years and really became, and that is really the outline or the essence of those 7 books. After that, the training was done, you know, again, waves end. That phase of my life was over some 5 years ago. And I said, all right, well, let me finish. Let me really put the icing on that cake. And so I wrote the 7 books on the 7 months. It was a 7-month training, very intense, very beautiful. Touched a lot of people. But it felt to me like that's over now. Yeah. You know, a lot of the work of personal development for me, it's all well and good. Look, I'm there. We should never stop healing ourselves. But you know what? Now I feel much more urgent that we take the love that we have found for ourselves and put it back to the whole, feed it back into the loop, give it back to the hologram.
Yeah.
We really desperately need to do this now. We need to do it quickly. We need to stop ooh, poo, and feeling sorry for ourselves. We need to stop looking at ourselves as small. We need to start looking at ourselves as divine. We need to take that responsibility now, not later. We need to bring others into that field because you see what's going on in the world. We really need it. Now, look at history. I think we've been here before.
Oh yeah.
We've made some bad choices before. And, you know, we don't need another war. We don't need World War III. It could happen as easy as a bad conversation on the telephone when somebody's amygdala is activated and they go into the fight mode. It's just as quick as that, and the button is right there. That's how easy this stuff happens. So we need, I feel urgently, we need to put this positive love that we have for ourselves and all the healing we've done for ourselves and now grow up and feed it back into the loop, because the loop touches everybody. Everybody's in that loop. Even Trump is in that loop. Everybody's a part of that. And the more we feed into it, the more we're likely to balance it. You know how many people are on the spiritual path compared to 30 years ago?
Oh, it's
amazing.
It does feel huge.
All right. I would go to a conference 35 years ago and teach, and to find any professional medical people or scientists was almost impossible. Now, 50-50, easily. It's wonderful and it's breathtaking to have somebody next to you to talk with about neuroscience and spirituality. It's turns out to be the same thing. How exciting.
Well, we always knew physicists were going to end up seeing God. Like, where else did they have to go? Because their findings were
at the end of the day, right? You know, the serpent, you know, ends up biting its own tail.
I don't know if they all have, but if you've reached kind of the point of going, okay, that's really, I need to step over that line because it's just gone beyond mathematics. Although mathematics is part of
And by feeding it back into the loop,
yes.
it can just tip the scales. There's enough people now to tip the scales.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see, you know, the darkness, so to speak, or the, you know, all of the nationalism and all of the divisiveness, all of the separateness, the feelings of being separate and defensive, you know, that's just brain activity. It's just brain activity. That's all it is. It's no big deal. It's not right or wrong. It's just brain activity. So if we just correct that and we get enough people doing that, we can feed back, and that will affect, I trust it completely, the loop and that hologram, as we call it, feeds everybody. And so we need to put back a positive force quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting because, yes, that oneness is very much that sense of what we're needing to understand. On the other side of it, I also see that real need to acknowledge and to love the actual richness of the diversity on this planet, of the richness of all the different cultures, the different spiritual paths. I think one of, you know, ownership of God by particular religions is particularly destructive in many ways. It's the root of,
you say ownership of what did you say? Of
God, that one particular religion thinks their path is the only path, and that the
yes.
other path is the wrong path.
How absurd, right? Ridiculous.
Oh, I think we're all here as part of the whole thing, but I think it is challenging for many of us, and for myself, to go, well, that person that I find really, you know, on the edge of you know, close to evil, they're part of our family, you know, they're all part of the same family. And how do we do some family therapy?
You know, I was talking to somebody yesterday. I was in a session yesterday and advising someone who was also teaching.
Yeah.
And we were talking about just that. How do I deal with those people?
Yes.
And basically I said, you know, I'll tell you how I deal with those people. First, I don't see them as a potential enemy.
Yeah.
Secondly, I see them as a potential ally. So what I've already done in advance is I've activated different parts of my brain. I've injected different chemicals into my blood. Then I move into the situation a whole different person. I am far more likely to respond to the needs I perceive from a cognitive sense and a heartful sense, and not emotionally overreact, which would just cause more reaction. You see, so I think the general answer and the quick answer to that is practice putting yourself into a loving state. And that's not all, you know, pink flowers and hearts. It simply is brain activity. Let's get this clear. It's not all of the fluff and of spirituality, which I love. I love it all. But
I'm saying that myself over and over. I'm saying this is not about, you know, the hippie peace and love. We're talking about radical peace. We're talking about radical love. They're concepts that the ascended masters have been trying to impart for a long time, and many have been fairly attacked in the past. We don't need to be attacked anymore. It's kind of just fundamental to our survival that we understand, and that the planet has been taught warfare, like it's extremely skilled at fighting, competing, comparing, and not so skilled at collective cohesiveness and community. Like that is, there are some models that do exist that we can work from, but it's like we do need to reinvent it and honor, but to honor the diversity too, the richness, and not say, you know, we don't want a homogenous mold. That, you know, the beauty of difference is a beautiful thing.
I'd say there's, you know, in every spiritual path throughout history, there's enormous value.
Absolutely.
And, you know, when you look at it and practice on some of those paths, you feel what happens to you. The unfortunate downside to every institution or every spiritual path that has become institutionalized, or a religion, of course, it's the nature of institutions to die. to become hollow shells.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the paths that originally had enormous value still do to some people, of course, but to many have become just hollow shells. And so don't serve, I believe, the purpose that they were meant to and once did.
Yeah, we know that Jesus would say, I did not say that.
Right,
Yep.
right. And yet the apostles only knew it was, it was blood chemistry and brain activity. But nothing changes, actually. It doesn't change anything. I mean, all of those teachings are right, and all of those teachings are correct.
Yeah.
So none of it's wrong, but the beauty of it is now we know why it works. And we can look at it, through the tech and with the technology that we have today. Breathtaking day to be alive and to be on the spiritual path.
I think it's really is about moving into consciously creating our future. And I just wanted to, it's interesting because your work to me actually has a very holistic element to it. You've started with, the holograph work. There's a bit of feedback there. The holograph work, which is very much about the intelligence and the mind, the greater mind. And I've looked at your the work that you're moving into at the moment, which is Volt work, values-oriented leadership training. And you speak of leadership from the heart, behaviors of being a light leader initiation. So it's a sense of bringing together the mind and the heart, again, that shamanic journey, which comprises the mystery and the magic of life with the fundamental, relationship between each other on a very concrete level. It's like bringing all of that together. So can you explain a little about Volt, this new program?
I'm very excited about Volt. Volt meaning values-oriented leadership trainings, the acronym Volt. And it's really the new training that I've developed and now teaching in Germany here, in Munich and Berlin. It's already started in Munich and starts in Berlin in January. Anyway, I'm so excited about it because this is my new wave. Like I said before, I left behind that path that really works and focuses on personal development and growth on the spiritual path. And now moving into working with love and light. What does that mean? Well, it means brain activity and blood chemistry. So now I'm working with people and leaders who are not afraid to touch other people with these facts. They're strong in what they do. They have professions that are in touch with other people. Not all of them are in leadership roles, but they are all people who consider themselves leaders. They're people who, lead the conversation at lunch, as an example. There are people who aren't afraid to connect. There are people who naturally communicate.
Yeah.
As it turns out, values are more valuable than we thought.
Yeah.
It's not just about dogma. It's not just about morals or even ethics.
Yes.
Again, values, science shows us, affect your brain activity. Can you imagine? Who knew? Your values affect your brain activity. Now that means, simply put, it's amazing. Simply put, when you have certain values and certain principles and you live by certain standards, there's a certain part of your brain that is activated. It might be the amygdala if you have those kinds of values. I, on the other hand, have values that are more inclusive, more loving, I think thoughts, and have values of compassion and all that fluffy stuff, seemingly fluffy stuff. But what it does is it activates another part of the brain called the anterior cingulate, and in particular, the insula. Okay, these are all wonderful little names, not so important to most people, but it's important to know that that part of the brain is activated because when that part of the brain, when the insula and anterior cingulate are activated, the odds of you making a better decision, clearer decisions, are in your favor. Okay? As opposed to if you're emotionally reacting, the decisions you make are going to be not so good. Yeah. They're not going to be productive. They're going to be, in a negative place. So I want to make good decisions. We need good decision makers. So Volt training has a lot to do with working with people who are aware of that fact and now are learning, with my help, to affect these parts of their brain consciously, purposefully, regularly, on a day-to-day basis throughout every day. That means when they move into a situation at work where this person, that person who we all know is over there at that desk, who no one really likes to be around, I, again, have prepared myself in a better way to relate to that person. So I will be less likely to make negative decisions as I approach that person and in the way I relate to that person. Much more likely to make positive decisions in, fulfilling the needs. What does this person need? I look at this big guy who's so aggressive, and I see a little boy who was beat by his dad, who, I feel sorry for him. And so I see him as I don't see him as somebody I need to fight. I see him as someone I need to feel compassion for. Yeah. And so in a sense, again, it's not all fluffy and pink. My heart reaches out to him. And so the odds are I won't get into an argument with him. I will avoid that and relate to him as a human being and support him in every way that I could possibly do, in that. And so that's what the VOLT training is all about. And that's what I believe we all need to be doing. So
Saiga, you've moved through a really interesting trajectory in your life, and it all comes together from my perspective. I can sit back objectively and see a very beautiful picture of where you've come from and where you're going. It's very much around empowering humans to actually rise to the highest potential. Absolutely. Stop blocking ourselves, but really acknowledging the power of our ability to shift out of a state into a much more heightened state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We can, if we want to, and if we know how to, and if we're also, I think, being aware of the latest research in the neurosciences is extremely helpful to understand how indeed powerful we truly are, how indeed powerful our thoughts and our emotions truly are. It's everything.
I'm going to finish this pretty soon, but I have a question that came to me at the very start of this entire series, and I've spoken with a few people along the way, and that was about healing, the healing of humanity who've been through, we really do have in our DNA a history of warfare, spiritual, racial, and religious warfare. And it's there, sitting in our memory, cellular memory, and some are experiencing it in this lifetime. So in a sense, it was about, some people believe, yes, you can quantum leap into a healing. You really can shift into that. Others believe it takes a lifetime. And, in a sense, I think they're both right. It does take a lifetime. It can take lifetimes to heal the generations of warfare that's been declared against you. And that's pretty well every person in every culture has had warfare declared and declared it against others. So it's just an interesting question about, can we, we can talk about changing our mind. But also there's a deeper healing that may take longer. I don't know. Can you speak to that? Does that...
Yes, I like to think, and what I'm thinking now, and I'm conscious that I'm thinking of this, and it's a choice of thought. Yeah. I like to think that we don't have time.
True.
Hara Singh, my Bhakti Yoga master teacher, taught me the value of urgency. Yeah. And I now really understand what he meant. I never really did. I thought I did, but I don't think I did. I feel like I do now, at least understand more. If we allow ourselves the luxury to allow ourselves to go on and continue the way we have, and find fault in the bad guys and the bad people and the bad situations, and it's their fault that we're in the state we're in. Right. I think it's just going to, go on. I don't think we can afford that luxury, so to speak. I think we need to really kind of, turn our head and face the importance of this moment. We have a moment. This is a moment, a striking moment in human history.
It is.
This is a window of opportunity we have never had before, I feel. Yeah. And if we miss it, pity on us. We don't need to, and I don't believe we will. But I do believe, and that's why I'm doing the work I am, I'm so urgent about it, we need to get everybody, as many people as we can, on board, so that the scale tips in favor of the light versus that darkness, as we talked about. I think we can.
Very true. Very true. In some ways, we have stepped over the line. The planet is suffering, and it is about making that really strong shift into a completely different way. So you're basically saying we need to do it now. There's no time to sit and lick our wounds. We need to.
So to speak, that's a good expression.
We have the tools. We know how to do it. Like enough of us do know how to do it.
Yes, and now we know how it works. So, you know, get over yourself. Gabrielle used to say, jump over yourself. You know, jump over your ego, lick your wounds. Julie, that was a great expression. Lick your wounds and get over it. Okay, we're all wounded children. Everybody's wounded. We're all traumatized. Of course, some are deeply traumatized much more than others. Not a question. But every child is wounded. So we all need to say, you know what? Okay, I was wounded. Great. Let's do, you know, some bilateral brain stimulation, eye movement, whatever. Use the tools that we know work. Okay? We have so many healing tools that work. We don't know all about why yet, but we know they work. So grow up, use the tools, get out of feeling sorry for yourself and stop pitying yourself. Start seeing yourself as a light that can change this world.
Beautiful.
And do it, and be with people who can do the same thing.
And you know, that's what this whole Inner Peace Masterclass is about, showing a range of modalities that people can see what they feel aligned with and find that way of bringing themselves down from that anxious or depressed state and come back, you know, quickly. Even just doing a few seconds of Kriya Yoga can really just bring you into a settled place. So it's all about breathing, and I honestly do believe that tools are right at many of our fingertips. There are some people who do need care. They do need to be looked after at a stage. You know, there are people who really can't quite get, you know, function properly. But there are many of us who can actually
that's the difference.
Do the heavy lifting kind of thing,
And we love to have that luxury extra time and think like, well, we have all the time we need. Yeah, we do, but we need all the time we have. We've heard that expression before. You know, so let's focus on the latter. We need the time we have. Let's focus on really putting it to work. Take the love that you have found for yourself, whatever it is, and feed it back into the hologram.
Well, we'll finish this on that beautiful note. Thank you so much. Before we completely finish, I just wonder if you can just tell the viewers the free gift, which I believe was one of the books from your series of the 7. The book on spirit.
Yeah, here it is.
Beautiful.
See it?
Yeah. Okay. Gorgeous.
That's the book I'd like to gift everyone. It's one out of the series of 7, the 7-volume set, The Human Hologram. By the way, it's in English and in German, because I live here in Germany and teach and work in Germany.
I'm trying to.
But that is the book number 7, and it's one of my favorites, actually. Probably the favorite of mine.
Yeah.
And you know, it gets into this chakra and the work concerning opening the third eye.
Yes.
And seeing the world differently, which is also very helpful as to what we said before. Really, it's I call it a state of awe, if we can, and that's what really the book is generally about. Learning to look at our world in the present. Usually, and the shaman would say, you know, we're kind of stuck in the tonal, which is viewing the world as it was. We carry boxes from the past, and we project it onto what we see in the present. Therefore, we try and shove everything in the present into the past. And so we're not really seeing what is, we're seeing what was, in a sense.
Yes.
So the shaman trains more to move into the Nagual, which is seeing things as they are. And of course, it's you can't really describe it. It's kind of non-touchable in that sense. You don't talk about it so much, but that's the result of it, is that you begin to see the world with eyes that are in awe of the world and truly see it for what it is. So that state of awe activates different brain parts, fills the body and brain with different chemicals, and shifts us into a higher state of consciousness.
Some of us who are working with the recapitulation work that the Toltecs developed are bringing together the tonal and the nagual to work together. So doing the clearing work and then doing some counseling at the other end of it, so people can fully clear what they've cleared on the mystical level.
Right.
It's become recognized by people who are working that they are bringing those two together to do the full clearing work. It's very interesting. But anyway, I just also want to mention your website, which was it? HTTP ://US, is that us? .humanholographics.com.
Yes, you can drop the HTTP, just www. US. And, go ahead.
humanholographics.com /.
Right, that's the English website, because I also have a German website, so not to get confused, you have your English clients.
Yes, so anyone who wants to track you down, they'll be able to see that on your page as part of this masterclass as well for the duration.
Exactly, yes.
Links there for them. So thank you so much, Otto. I really want to thank you so much for talking.
Thank you, Julie. I really appreciate your integrity in approaching this. Yeah, you're doing a great job. So blessings, and keep going.
Oh, thank you so much, and blessings to you in your work also. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.